The Forgotten Giant, why the K5 Pacific was the pinnacle of Pennsylvania Railroad passenger steam. It was sleek, powerful, and born from the ambitions of a railroad empire. But why did the Pennsylvania Railroad only build two of them? This is the story of the K5 Pacific, the forgotten steam giant that could have redefined passenger service, but instead became a rare glimpse into what might have been. Welcome back to Train Explained, where we uncover the stories behind history's most fascinating locomotives. Today, we're diving into one of the most underrated passenger engines ever built by the mighty Pennsylvania Railroad, the K5 Class Pacific. While most rail fans can rattle off the famous Pennsylvania K4 or the legendary GG1 electrics, the K5 is often overlooked. But this locomotive was no footnote. It was the ultimate evolution of Pennsylvania's Pacific-type steam, designed for more power, more speed, and a glimpse into the future of streamlined travel. So why didn't it succeed? And what made it special in the first place? Let's find out. To understand the K5, we need to first understand the world it was born into. By the 1920s, the K4 Pacific had become the dominant passenger engine of the Pennsylvania Railroad. With over 400 units built, it was fast, powerful, and reliable. It pulled everything from the Broadway Limited to regional commuter runs. But the 1920s also marked a period of increasing train lengths, heavier consists, and rising expectations from passengers. The Pennsylvania needed something even stronger and more modern. Enter the K5. In 1929, the Pennsylvania's Altoona Works unveiled two prototypes of a brand new class, the K5 Pacific. These locomotives were intended as the next logical step beyond the K4. They were longer, heavier, and equipped with a larger boiler, increased steam pressure, and longer piston strokes to generate more tractive effort. The two locomotives, number 5698 and number 5699, were built back-to-back, but with notable differences. Number 5698 was built with Walschaerts valve gear, the standard used on the K4. Number 5699, however, featured Caprotti rotary cam poppet valves, a more experimental design that promised better steam flow and more precise timing at higher speeds. Both engines were immediately set to work on high-speed passenger service to test their capabilities. The K5 was a true brute, especially for a Pacific-type engine. Wheel arrangement, 462, driver diameter, 80 inches, boiler pressure, 250 pounds per square inch. Cylinders, 227 by 30 inches. Tractive effort, over 49,000 pounds. Weight on drivers, over 210,000 pounds. Total engine weight, 380,100 pounds. It was clear, this was not just a bigger K4. The K5 was in the same league as the New York Central's J-Series Hudsons or the Milwaukee Road F7s, high-performance passenger power meant for speed and prestige. The ride was smooth. The locomotives handled heavy 16 to 18 car passenger consists with ease, and on downhill stretches, the big drivers helped maintain momentum like a freight train on steroids. But the K5 wasn't just about brute force. It was about pushing the envelope in steam technology. Of the two K5s, number 5699 was particularly ambitious. Its Caprotti valve gear was rare in American locomotives and considered highly advanced for its time. Instead of using the traditional piston-style valves, it used rotating cams and valves for faster response and more efficient steam delivery. Theoretically, it would allow for higher speeds with less wear and tear and greater thermal efficiency. In practice, it was complicated. Maintenance crews weren't familiar with the system, and parts were difficult to replace. So while the concept was sound, the execution in Pennsylvania Railroad service proved frustrating. This wasn't unusual. By the 1930s, railroads all over the world were experimenting with poppet valves, roller bearings, and even streamlining. The K5 was the Pennsylvania's entry into this engineering race, but being a company known for conservatism, the K5s remained isolated experiments. Despite their success on the rails, the Pennsylvania never ordered more K5s. Why? There are a few reasons. 1. Cost and complexity. The K5s were expensive to build and maintain compared to the proven K4s. The Caprati gear, in particular, added complexity that shop crews weren't trained for. 2. Dieselization looming. By the 1930s, Pennsylvania Railroad was already beginning to experiment with diesel and electric power. The need for a new steam class was becoming questionable, especially for a company investing heavily in electric main lines like the GG1 corridor. 3. The Great Depression. Railroads everywhere were cutting costs. Building an entirely new steam fleet during the worst economic crisis in U.S. history wasn't viable, even for the mighty Pennsylvania Railroad. As a result, the K5 remained a two-locomotive class, running in high-speed service for over a decade, but never becoming the new standard. While the K5 never saw mass production, it left a lasting impression on Pennsylvania Railroad engineers and locomotive historians alike. It represented the technical peak of the Pacific type, arguably the most refined 462 the Pennsylvania ever put on rails. Its performance validated the use of larger fireboxes, higher boiler pressure, and advanced valve gear. Some of those lessons would later influence Pennsylvania's T1 duplexes and even the eventual S1 and S2 steam turbines. In many ways, the K5 was the bridge between the practical and the experimental, between the K4s and the wild concepts that came later. Both K5 locomotives were eventually retired by the early 1950s, as diesels and electrics fully took over the Pennsylvania's passenger services. Sadly, neither unit was preserved. They were both scrapped, vanished like so many other steam prototypes that served briefly and disappeared before their time. It's one of the biggest losses in American rail preservation. A K5 would have been a crown jewel in any museum collection, an example of what might have replaced the K4 had history played out just a little differently. Even though the K5 is gone, it still holds an important place in railroading history. It reminds us of a time when railroads weren't afraid to experiment, to push designs forward even if the market wasn't ready. It also stands as a cautionary tale. Even the best technology can be ignored if it arrives too late or demands too much in a changing world. The K5 was born at the edge of steam's golden era and faded out just as diesel was claiming the throne. But for a moment in time, it was the pinnacle of passenger steam on the Pennsylvania Railroad. So the next time you hear someone praise the K4 or the GG1, ask them if they've heard of the K5. Tell them about the two engines that tried to redefine passenger power and almost succeeded. If you enjoyed this deep dive into a lesser-known locomotive legend, give this video a like, leave a comment about your favorite forgotten engine, and subscribe for more railroad history brought to life. Thanks for watching, and remember, the rails are full of stories if you know where to look. See you in the next one.